So I do not think that Israel killed Charlie Kirk in some sort of black op situation. And the least I could say is that if I were Benjamin Netanyahu or some evil mastermind in the Mossad or wherever, I would not kill Charlie Kirk. In fact, I would desperately try to keep him alive. But I would grant that the situation is complicated. When Charlie Kirk was murdered last Wednesday, Harrison Smith of InfoWars retweeted a post from a month or so earlier about how Charlie Kirk was afraid of pushback from his donors on the Israel issue. And this seemed to get the ball rolling. So I remember people jumping on that right away. And then it started to metastasize in all of these different ways. So Max Blumenthal of the Gray Zone, which is, and I say this without any sort of hesitation, a Russian op, and has engaged in all sorts of nonsense and the true stuff that they say could probably be considered chicken feed. They claim that Charlie Kirk was pressured by donors and that there was a $150 million pledge that was dependent upon Charlie Kirk backing the genocide in Israel. And this was made by none other than Netanyahu himself. Netanyahu visited Charlie Kirk and dangled this before him. We've got 150 million, but you got to play ball with us. And that would have doubled the size of Turning Point USA, which I've heard various numbers, $100 million organization, $150 million organization, massive. But this would have doubled it. There is zero evidence for this outside of the word of Max Blumenthal. And I don't trust that little man as far as I can throw him. Although, to be fair, I could probably throw him quite a ways. But you get my point. I need more than the word of Max Blumenthal. That is pure hearsay, rumor. I just need some sort of real evidence for this. Now, I remember there was an interview with Greta Van Susteren with Bibi Netanyahu after the death of Charlie Kirk, and she said, well, these rumors are all over the internet. Did you kill him? Or what do you think? And I'll grant you that his body language was pretty bad. He was kind of all over the place, and his words and emotions weren't matching. Okay, but body language or what, that's not evidence for anything. I want to know this because the fact is, someone like Max Blumenthal is highly motivated to perpetuate this kind of stuff. First off, he's a Russian asset. Who knows what they're up to? But also, Max Blumenthal, perhaps to his credit, has been a long-time critic of Israel, well before October 7th and the Gaza bombardment, well before that. So he is highly motivated to say these kinds of things. And what he seems to be doing is that he's stealing Charlie Kirk's legacy. Charlie Kirk's legacy, in my mind, is of conservative talking points and Christian Zionism. That is the fairest assessment of Charlie Kirk's legacy. If you want to honor Charlie Kirk, that's what you should be doing, because that's what he was ultimately about. So this idea of actors who hated Charlie Kirk for years and then now want to claim him as one of their own in death when he's not able to speak back, it's highly suspicious. Candace Owens has upped the ante, and she's talked about Bill Ackman, I believe, talking to Charlie in the Hamptons and laying down the law, and Charlie felt afraid, and so on and so forth. She also claims that all these people are scheming to take over TPUSA so it doesn't go anti-Zionist. I just need some sort of evidence for this for me to believe it. And the words of Blumenthal and Candace Owens is not enough. Now, to be fair, I do think that there was a ambiguous situation going on with TPUSA because this is the reality. You can look at polling. Conservatives are still strongly in support of Israel and strongly in support of the destruction of Gaza, ultimately, because that's ultimately what supporting Israel at this moment means. The left has basically just taken a U-turn on this issue. There is dramatic falling of support for Israel. Now, among the young right, you also see a significant change, if not quite the change that we see among the left and even among mainstream liberals. So I think it's fair to say that within TPUSA, there are many people who are attending those conferences who are outright anti-Zionist, or at the very least, sort of America First types. We don't want to get caught up in another war and blah, blah, blah. And Charlie is feeling the pressure of that. Why? Because Charlie isn't Ben Shapiro. If Ben Shapiro were in charge of TPUSA, he would have nipped everything in the bud, because Ben Shapiro is a pugilist like me, like Nick Fuentes. We want to get into fights with people because fighting is fun. If you want to argue with me about a movie, I'll get into a big, long, drawn-out fight with you because it's cool to argue and debate. That energizes us. Charlie Kirk, very different. Now, he'll debate the left. There's no question. People who he is on the opposite side of, abortion is wrong, change my mind. He will do that, in which he is going to engage in this back and forth of platitudes. In terms of the right, he is a big tent people pleaser. He wants everyone to love him. And that includes Candace Owens. That includes Tucker Carlson. That includes Ben Shapiro. That includes Bibi Netanyahu. That includes Matt Walsh, who's sort of on both sides of things. That includes the 19-year-old groiper who's working at TPUSA and creating Charlie Kirk hype videos that they can post on X. He wants to please all of those people. There are people like that. I am not one. And he's like the camp counselor, the town mayor. This is who he is. And so there's no doubt that doing things like that, focus group where you have a lot of young people and they're going anti-Israel, that he's having to deal with this situation. Now, to be fair, might Zionist bigwigs think to themselves, we don't want to even tolerate this stuff anymore. We want Ben Shapiro in charge, and he is just going to cut it out with a machete, just whoosh, gone. Everyone on stage at TPUSA is pro-Zionist. We're not debating this issue, etc. Maybe. But there's just no evidence of that. And I have a bit of a different view. If I were a Zionist mastermind, in the upper layers of Mossad, I would actually like the dialectic. Why? Because you're ultimately going to neutralize the other side. So look at all of these instances. Charlie Kirk doesn't want the Iran bombing to become another forever war in the Middle East. So he's going to go to Trump and say, no more forever wars. We don't like that stuff. We're America first. But then he supports the bombing anyway. He supports it and he'll Goldilocks it as, just enough, not too much. Allowing all of those Groyper types into TPUSA. Now, maybe at some point in the recent past, that would be a no-no. They would hunt you down and kick you out. But now it's a little bit different. You let them make hype videos for you. You let them buy tickets to your event. You let them scream and shout Christ is King while girls in bikinis are firing t-shirt guns at you, and you have a dubstep techno music blasting while Ted Cruz comes on stage. That's what those events are like, by the way, and I'm not exaggerating. I'm underselling, in fact. Why? Because you're ultimately neutralizing them. TPUSA is a fan club. It's a kind of rock concert for conservatives. And so the more people you get on the same page, the more people you can get to ultimately reluctantly agree to the bombing of Iran, say, or the continued support of Israel because, yeah, we're American first, but we just have to because Muslims bad. They're an aircraft carrier for us, blah, blah, blah. We've heard all those talking points. Do I know what's in the mind of Bibi Netanyahu? God knows. Do I know what happened in those conversations between Bibi and Charlie Kirk that invariably occurred? Of course I don't. But I can just put myself in their shoes. I would say, look, the support for Israel is collapsing across the board. We are in dire straits. Let's play this dialectical strategy where we sort of bring them in, give them a little recognition, use their talking points, do a little race baiting. We're good at that, and we've been doing that for 60 years. But ultimately neutralize them and ultimately get them on Team Red, which was, is, and will be pro-Israel. So just to sum up, there is no evidence for this. The evidence that we have is coming from totally disreputable sources. InfoWars, Max Blumenthal, Candace Owens. And secondly, Charlie Kirk, to his dying day, believed that as a Christian, he wants to protect the holy sites where Jesus walked on water and turned water into wine and raised Lazarus. He is not just strategically committed to Israel. He is religiously, emotionally, viscerally supportive of Israel. It is very, very hard to turn someone who's connected to Israel in this fashion. That's why they get him at the churches, they get him while they're young. It would be like trying to make someone hate apple pie or their hometown. Oh. And finally, there is a strategic benefit to allowing not too much, but just enough rad, trad, Groyper-esque, alt-right criticism of Israel within your movement, so long as you close the doors of the big tent and lock them inside of it.